in One Soccer Today, Annie Petrillo. That's Oliver Platt. That is Jordan Wilson right there. One Soccer Today, we've got some news to get into right out of the gate, gentlemen. That, of course, Robin Fraser, as we know, has been appointed head coach of Toronto FC, but he was formally introduced to the media on Wednesday. And Keith Pelly actually started things off, CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Jason Hernandez also spoke, GM as well of Toronto FC, before Robin Fraser made his introduction onto the stage. Bless you, my friend.
You're all right then?
You good? You good?
Sorry, guys.
We're ready to go.
Hey, fever. Hey, fever.
Nearly fell off the screen.
Yeah.
It was a big sneeze. Sorry,
Well, I'm just making everyone wait a little bit longer here because we wanted to know what the messaging was going to be to the fans. And we finally got our answer, guys, because Keith Pelly, being the first to speak, flat out said that while they're trying to get back to the glory days, that's the only song I can keep hearing in my head every time they say that, he did mention that the glory days can also be the here and now. And that they haven't made the playoffs in the last 4 years, but that this is a perennial contender. They want to get back to that. They believe they can be that even this year, Ollie. So that is the message. There's not a message of, let's take some time. There's not a message of rebuild. There's not a message of we're trading away this guy, that guy, every guy, whatever, and kind of, trying to lay a new path here. It was, we believe in what we have and we can be contenders. Do you like that message?
I liked the positivity in that they clearly have done a lot of thinking, I think, about what the plan is and how they want to take this club forwards. I would personally say we need to be realistic about it. I don't imagine Toronto FC being a contending team in MLS this year, but I also don't think it necessarily takes that long in MLS to turn a club around, as Robin Fraser showed to a certain extent in his stint in Colorado. So, there's reasons to be optimistic there. I thought it was an interesting press conference. Like, the most interesting part for me was Jason Hernandez spoke at length, 9 minutes uninterrupted, basically outlining what this club's style of play and philosophy is going to be going forwards. And he drew on, a few different things, but most notably the Canadian men's national team and the style that Jesse Marsch has implemented there, a more up-tempo, aggressive style of play. And that really seemed to set the stall out for what's going to be expected here. There wasn't any questions asked, unfortunately, about Lorenzo Insigne and his future, which was also the other thing that was kind of on my mind. But going back to Hernandez's answer, or kind of speech, I guess, a lot of the things he laid out in terms of what he wants this team to be, the image that they want to play in, seemed like the complete opposite of what Lorenzo Insigne is as a player. Someone who likes to take a bit more time on the ball. Maybe you don't get a ton of defensive work rate out of him. At this stage of his career, isn't physically probably the best player, has had some problems with injuries. There seems to be quite an obvious clash between their highest paid player, their highest profile designated player, and this style that, they're seeming to be preaching under Robin Fraser. So that's obviously something that we'll have to see what the resolution is there. But it was pretty interesting to listen to a club basically lay out this whole new identity.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting too, just the relationship. I mean, Jason Hernandez made it clear that the club will ultimately have the decision on any players that they do end up trading away, but that Robin Fraser would have a lot of say in that. So there does seem to be some cohesion in that type of relationship. We wondered how much say Fraser would have, even though Jason made it perfectly clear they would make the ultimate decision, but the coach would then have the ultimate decision on how he played those guys. And then to your point, Jason Hernandez said after 95 minutes, our players basically are going to be gassed.
Running yourself into the ground for 95 minutes. Yeah.
That's exactly what he said.
It's not Insigne.
Yeah. And that is not Insigne. That may be Bernadeschi, but that is definitely not Insigne. And I almost feel like they're drawing that line in the sand. So while there didn't appear to be any direct mentions of Lorenzo Insigne in their presser, Jordo, there also seemed to be like a line drawn in the sand of this is how we're going to be, and this is our identity, and this is what we're getting back to. And if you're not on board, too bad.
By April Fool's, Andy, that would have crashed and burned. There is no way that you are going to get that 5'4" Italian man who run himself into the ground. That has never been his game. You put all this money into Homeboy to go and score goals and to create, and you're saying you guys are going to be a bit more primitive, or you're gonna run teams off the pitch. I'm telling you, by April Fool's, if that is the plan, some players will buy in, but it's not going to work with the roster that TFC has. That's my humble opinion. I could be wrong going into the future, but no chance. We ended 2024 talking about Lorenzo Insigne and how he should probably, they have to bite the bullet and just, it's a hefty lump sum that they're going to lose moving him on. But basically the consensus was that they're not going to be able to win or compete with him playing. And then now you're going even a step further and saying that you want to go run and press teams off the pitch and play a Jesse Marsch highlight? Stop. Guys, what's going on? Like, they will get smoked this way.
Well, didn't Herdman try that? Like, Herdman tried that, where it felt like they were playing playoff soccer to start the season. I thought Jonathan Osorio was going to puke up his breakfast every game, and then they ended up getting all kinds of injuries. I can appreciate what Jason's saying, but to your point, do they have that roster?
Injuries can be a big issue if you have a roster that's not prepared for that kind of style of play. And the comparison that I'd use more is Chris Armas. Like, he came in with Ali Curtis saying we're going to play Red Bull football, had a squad that was just not suited to it, and it crashed and burned and came apart, before we'd got to the end of June, I think it was. So, like, it's one thing to say all these things and you can talk a good game and it sounds good, and it did sound good, particularly when they talked about how those are the strengths of players coming up through the GTA and some of the young talent. That makes sense. And I think, like they said, Canada have tapped into the same thing. But the execution of it is a different story. And right now, I tend to agree with Jordan that TFC isn't in a place with its roster to really play that style without significant change.
Don't get me wrong. There's some young players, Andy, like the Franklins or whatever. Like, that should be their game. Like, I look at TFC's squad, and not everyone needs to be a luxurious player with time on the ball. There needs to be players that just put their head down every week, every day at training, and grind for the badge. But at the end of the day, the difference between the teams that are playing in the last game of the season in MLS and the teams that don't is because their DPs and their star players step up and they're in full form. They're fit, they're healthy, they had a good season, and they're working. Who are those players for TFC on this roster right now? Those players with 30 teams in the MLS will not be the last man standing. And furthermore, playing this type of system, that's not gonna breed success for this squad. So, as I said, by April Fools, it's done.
Well, so two things. Number one, I wonder what Theo. Remember, we were debating. Didn't he change the pronunciation of his name? It was Corbinu or Corbianu.
I think so.
Where did we go with? Theo has now joined TFC. We'll find out soon enough. Theo, we're big fans, but we got to figure out, because you changed it up on us when you got those call-ups to the national team. But he's a young guy that will now be with TFC. We'll see what he can bring. But I wonder, this is just obviously a guess based on everything that's being said. We know that Lorenzo Insigne's contract runs through the summer of 2026. Is this in some way even the club's way of saying, we don't care if you're happy anymore or not? Like, we're more than happy if you're going to sit there, or maybe if you're going to be miserable, because we have to move on. We can't sell you. There are no takers. And we're not willing to buy you out because maybe they don't have the money to do that. Like, I wonder if they're past the point now of making sure he's happy. And maybe they're like, you're either on board or you're not. And if you're not going to be a starter one game, maybe you're not. I think that's going to be maybe Robin Fraser's call at the end of the day. But there's a part of me that's getting this sense that they don't care if he's happy or not anymore. He needs to do what they want him to do, because he hasn't been. Am I the only one thinking that way? Or is that just me being...
No.
I don't think he can do what they want him to do, though, at this point in his career. And, like, you can't have a player sitting there miserable on the bench who's earning $15 million. Like,
that's always, but I just feel like they're completely, this is the true, like, rock in a hard place scenario, right?
Yeah.
For this club.
I think they got by him out.
I don't know how we ended 2024 and it was a resounding, everyone's like, it's not going to work with Insigne. And then now press conference comes out today and no one's talking about if he's moving, if he's staying, what's going on. It's basically like, okay, Fraser's going to come in. We're going to have a new identity that is worse than it was before for Lorenzo Insigne, but we're going to get a better product. I just don't know how that works.
We can mention quickly, like, Tom Bogert reported he's obviously very reliable with MLS, and this is the latest we have on it, is that they're trying to separate. So, take that for what you want.
And maybe there's more happening behind the scenes that obviously Jason Hernandez would be privy to that he just didn't share, but those little code words and those little kind of, messaging that he sends out leads you to believe that maybe they can have this type of style, because maybe Insigne will not be with the team moving forward. Okay, before we tie a bow on this press conference, Keith Pelly was also very excited to welcome back
Excited. Look
the
at
Hawk.
you.
I am very excited too. By the way, say her name. Okay, her name is Bitchy. She was the
Woo.
first ever Hawk that Toronto FC had because it was also, they needed her, right? They had a lot of afternoon games, a lot of Seagulls. So they would have the Hawk fly in during the pregame ceremony. So that's going to return. She's going to fly back in and then she would go in her little coop up top and scare off all the Seagulls. I think her daughter has taken over. I had the privilege of taking a photo with Bitchy's daughter, who then assumed the responsibilities
What's her
at the
name?
field. I think they literally just called her Bitchy Jr.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And when I asked the handler, I said, why the name? He's like, why do you think? Like,
That is hilarious.
That's the kind of Hawk you want. So he's very excited. There's obviously this big statue that was made of her. She's going to, right now she's at the practice facility. She's going to move on over
The
to
statue
BMO
is
Field.
crazy.
I love the statue. The Hawk itself is going to return to BMO Field during the pregame ceremonies. We know that Vancouver FC and CPL, they have Hercules and Bitchy. Just imagine if they had little bebes. They could be all over the soccer fields in Canada. Are you, Jordan, as excited as I am about the return of the Hawk?
You gosh darn can believe it. Fly, Bitchy, fly.
Yes!
Bitchy, fly. I love
Molly,
it.
I can already
I
tell
love
by
it.
your reaction. You are in the minority. Too bad, so sad.
Come on.
I mean, I guess I'm okay with the actual like Hawk.
Yes.
You know, that's the massive silver like trophy statue type thing is not for me. Like, I guess when you try and set out a vision at the beginning, sometimes it looks a little bit ridiculous. Sometimes those are the people that actually have the vision. But I don't know. When I saw that, I was like,
No, man.
where's that going?
Yay for Bitchy, but nay for the statue.
Yeah.
The statue's a lot.
I'm telling you right now, that statue is going to be in all kinds of selfies. I'm telling you right now, like the over under, I'm even going to say 500. 500. I'm going to go even over. Set the line at
Won't be
500.
me.
I'm going over on selfies when people go to the field to watch TFC games and take selfies with that. All right, let's turn our attention now to CF Montreal because they've made a lot of roster changes. They've lost some DPs. They have 2 DP spots right now that have been filled. But take us through these changes to the roster, Ollie, and what you make of them when it comes to CF Montreal.
Well, I think you can see, and this is obviously a really encouraging thing for CF Montreal, that the off-season changes they made at the end of last season, really, when it came to their front office and really, restocking that front office and having some proper leadership in place, and just filling some of their gaps that were there, obviously after Olivier Renard had left, has made a difference. They've started this off-season with real intent and look to be building a squads that I think should be better equipped for Laurent Courtois to be competitive this season compared to last. So we'll get into some of the moves they've made, but I just think there's been a clear kind of difference in the way they're operating compared to last season, and that's a good thing for this club.
Yeah, so what about those moves, right? Because we know they've lost some pretty significant players and then brought some on board, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jalen Neal is one that stands out. I think that's a really good acquisition of a player who probably fell out at LA Galaxy, not because they necessarily wanted to move him on, but because there's some cap crunch going on there when you win an MLS Cup, as is usually the case. And then the really interesting one, and the one I think a lot kind of rests on as far as Montreal's season goes, is Giacomo Vrioni, who is a designated player. He was someone who New England Revolution paid nearly $4 million to sign this player a couple of seasons ago. Didn't really work out there, but they've decided to bring him in Montreal for a very cheap price, obviously a bigger salary to fill a DP spot. This is a club that I think will go with 2 designated players instead of 3 and use that new model with the U22 players. And he's got to produce. Joseph Martinez is gone. He was a big player for them. Vrioni's got to come in and kind of live up to the initial billing that he arrived with in New England.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie's going to be a seasoned pro. Like at 26, you look at CF Montreal's team, a lot of young gems, but they still need some time to really show all that he can do. CF Montreal, are they spending a little bit of money now, Andy? Are they? Just a little bit?
Debatable.
I mean, you know what? They're doing what my dad does, okay? When we go to a fast food restaurant or Harvey's, he's like, I got the check. This one's on me, guys. The $50. Like he's throwing the red boy down. But the big meals, it's on, I don't know where my wallet is. you hope for this team, CF Montreal, that they do spend a little bit. I don't know why they couldn't get another DP. Again, I don't know about Gam Tam and all that great stuff, but just another
They should.
great player
Yeah.
that should come in and contribute to the squad. But I like Veroni. I think if he can stay healthy, I think he needs to stay healthy. They could be dangerous. I'm really looking forward to that Can Chat match. CF
It's
Montreal.
like kind of spending money because they've acquired a DP, but they've done it by getting someone else's salary cap dump.
Sounds like the Montreal way, no?
Player, right? So yeah, that's always been the kind of the methodology with them is one man's trash and see if you can uncover a rough diamond.
And maybe is it because they have faith that Laurent Courtois? I mean, obviously, what he was able to do near the end of the season. Now, a lot of that Martinez just like caught a heater and was able to score a bunch of goals for them down the stretch as well, and kind of, sneak them in a little bit there. I wonder if they just have faith with their manager to say, work with what you have, because this is what created a lot of that controversy around CF Montreal the last couple of years, is they were losing players. They weren't filling them. They weren't spending the money. Now Martinez is gone. Wanyama is gone. Do you, and then, I mean, obviously Ollie, you seem to be of the belief that they're probably not going to bring in a third DP. If you are a part of the fan base, like, are you kind of liking what you've seen? Is there still time to do stuff? Or are you kind of believing it's the same old, same old?
I think they have one DP right now. If they don't bring in a second one, then you can accuse them of a lack of ambition and a lack of spending all over again, and we'll have that debate. The third DP, obviously, there's two different models now that teams use. You can have two DPs and 4 under 22 players, or 3D and a load of GAM. Or 3 DPs and 3 under 22 players. And I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing in the world to choose the 2 DP model. It gives you a lot of flexibility for the rest of your roster, particularly if you want to build around young players like Montreal do. So, so far, so good, I think. And Vrioni, I think there is more there. Like he's got some interesting underlying numbers in terms of goal scoring. So I think there's potentially something to be tapped there. We'll just see what they do with the second DP spot now.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about this? CF Montreal president Gabriel Gervais told the media this season he wants to win a cup. Win a cup. Just said win a cup. So we know that there are 3 tournaments where that is possible for him to do that. Not so much tournaments, but there is the actual MLS Cup. There's the Leagues Cup. That's the tournament. And there's also the Canadian Championship. Do you believe that this is a very doable request to win a cup by the president of CF Montreal, or do you think it's ambitious given, getting, barely making the playoffs, getting knocked out of the Canadian Championship in the quarterfinals, Forge finally beating them? How do you feel about that goal, Jordan, by the president?
I think it's a goal that every team should set out every year, and I think that it's definitely achievable for CF Montreal when you're looking at Can Champs, the Canadian Championship. You play TFC in the first round. I love that had something to do with that matchup. The fact that you get these two teams early, an MLS team is going to be knocked out. But then, maybe it's redemption. If CF Montreal can get by Toronto FC in the first round, they probably have to play Forge or Halifax in the quarterfinals. And we all know what happened in 2 legs in 2024. Forge took it to CF Montreal. So I think if there's a tournament, if there's a cup to win, it is that one. And I think if they can get past those 2 first games, why not win it all? Please don't let Vancouver Whitecaps go and win another Can Champs. Someone has to take them off their high horse. They have to.
You're done with 3 in a row? You're just done with 3 in a row? Okay.
That's enough.
We have another...
Quickly, like this is the thing for TFC and Montreal is like by May, your chances of winning a trophy are going to have gone dramatically up or down based on whether you win that preliminary round tie. Massive game.
That is crazy. Quickly though, speaking of TFC and CF Montreal, Prince Owusu, who was once with TFC, is now with CF Montreal. What do you think of that, Ollie?
I think there's a decent player there. Like, I don't think he's going to be the number 1 guy, but if you could get him at a bit of a better price tag contract-wise than he was on in Toronto, he was in a tough spot. Like, he was signed before Herdman was appointed, so he was never really his pick or his player. He had some good runs and he had some very poor runs, but I think there's something there that can be useful to your squad. Quickly,
he's a guy not to start all the time. He is not your preferred number 9. He's the guy in the 70th minute where you need something different. Slap on Prince Owusu, and that would benefit him more. Like he shouldn't be your main target guy to play all the time. And I felt like with TFC, the fact that he is put kind of in the fire a lot, it didn't really suit him and suit his game. It wasn't made for him to succeed in that position.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we have some big news. You know, it's kind of big breaking news when I have to read it on my phone. And maybe I should touch my ears if I'm speaking to my producer to go, oh, do
I
we
love
have
that.
some great breaking news here?
Sell it.
And
Yeah.
this is coming out of
Flash it.
Kingston, Ontario. Flash breaking news across the bottom of the screen, please. Breaking news is positive news here when it comes to the possibility of CPL expansion. So the city of Kingston held they got together, council got together, and they took a really big step forward in building a soccer specific stadium. Council passed a motion to pursue a lease to build a 4,000 seat soccer specific stadium at Memorial Center in the Kingston core. So yes, this can pave the way for a League One team, so a semi-pro team, but obviously the mayor himself on numerous occasions when even talking about this getting built, kept talking about the CPL. So obviously it is worth noting that there's still some steps that need to be taken here, right? The CPL has to give approval. It looks like they do want this to be up and running by 2027. Marnie Dicker, who is the Executive VP of Infrastructure and Chief Legal Officer for CPL, had a lot of positive things to say about this step. And, you know, obviously they're very happy that it was passed. And I think there's some other things that are worth noting here as well, Ollie, because one of the big ones, of course, is a lot of people say we don't want taxpayers' dollars going to this. This is going to be completely funded privately. But there's just like, you know, as much as there's a lot of positivity, a little bit of pushback, as is always the case. But there seems to be a lot of excitement here for the soccer community.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, I think there should be excitement around projects like this. And we know how difficult it has been in Canada to get facilities built. And we know that we are way behind, I think, in terms of infrastructure. If we want to get to where we want to go as kind of a soccer country for the CPL, for the NSL, just in general. So it's a challenge that these leagues have and these clubs have, is like making the sales pitch to different communities around Canada where there's a lot of kind of instant resistance of like, well, how much parking is going to be needed? Is it going to like break up a neighborhood? Is there going to be a lot of noise? Is taxpayer money going to be involved? Should we be spending that on sports as opposed to, you know, healthcare and things like that? And I understand all of those concerns, but I think you're trying to create a picture for people who haven't necessarily seen it before of what a facility like that and the clubs that inhabit it can be to the communities, right? And maybe if you've lived in a different country where soccer's been there for 100 years, or if you've played there or whatever, you have a bit more of an understanding of what these kind of clubs can represent and the community hubs that they can be and the good they can do within these communities. But if you've never seen it before, and a lot of places in Canada haven't, like that's all novel to you, right? Like you can't just understand that or be expected to understand that without having necessarily witnessed it and what it can mean and what it can do. So it's the job of, again, these clubs and these leagues to try and kind of sell that idea and sell that vision of what they can be.
Jordan?
This is beautiful news. Look, we saw Simcoe County when they played TFC, and the fact that everyone went, so many, I forget the number, but so many people traveled and everyone got behind a team for one game. Imagine now in Kingston, did the math, 285 kilometers away from my home. Andy, road trip. I got the snacks. Ollie, you're more than welcome. I don't know if your long legs can fit in my Honda Fit, but maybe we could just lay you down in the back. I'll put the seats back.
I'll take the back.
Yeah, you can get the hatchback. This is what you want to hear. Club, perfect little spot as well. Going a bit east. This is what you want to hear, man, and people getting behind it. So I totally agree with you, Ollie. I think that for other people, you can maybe be tempted, but you got to get behind your area and your city, and if you're not close to your sister city, brother city, whatever it is, get close and really support the league, because this is the movement. You got to take football to a different level in this country for sure. And
it really does sound like there's still going to be a lot of community events that happen there that will still be very much maintained. Yeah. And back, like even how it used to be back when TFC even first entered MLS, the pitch itself was open to the public. So like that pitch will still be very much available to the community during non-games. And there's a lot of other things that happen around it. But you're right. At the end of the day, certain things will have to go down if you're going to put in parking and have people there. But Marnie Dicker, when she did speak, talked about the walkability of it, because it is in the city center. That's another reason why we love the location. Halifax Wanderers, where they are, is actually perfect, and people being able to walk to it as opposed to having to take sometimes that transportation that you have to create room for or can clog things up from a traffic perspective. So anyways, we'll see where that goes and the CPL itself. And now that that's been approved, what those types of meetings will look like in the future as they try to secure a CPL team. Speaking of a CPL team, we know that Forge is going to be competing in Champions Cup once again, gentlemen. They've become pretty much a mainstay, perennial contenders. Monterey is who they will face. That first game will go February 5th. And Forge is already making a big splash with some off-season additions here. Let's talk Brian Wright. Sign a multi-year contract.
Woo!
How do you think the addition of Brian Wright, Jordan, the Players Player of the Year, by the way, from the CPL Awards back in November, voted on by his fellow players in the league. He was voted a Player of the Year. How much does he transform Forge's attack?
I thought about it deeply, and I was thinking about the fact that has there been a better number 9 signing for Forge ever? Like, there's been some star players that have come in, but has there been a more fitting, better signing than Brian Wright? And we have to shout out Tony Anthony, who called this and watches all the games. And he called this from early.
Do you explain who Tony is?
Tony, I didn't even know.
People who don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you his title, but I know Tony's the dog. What's Tony's title?
Audio.
One
Soccer's long-time audio engineer. Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, that's
Great
the
guy.
Tony you're talking about.
Yeah,
even Andy didn't know.
Yeah, like I couldn't. Yeah, but now Ali, it takes a village.
Anthony
Seneca? I didn't even know his last name, but that's my dog.
Anthony Seneca, that's him.
That's my boy. Sorry, Joe.
Where are you right now?
I'm back. He needs to be.
Anthony, we're so sorry. This is your
He's
big
getting a
debut.
shout out. Heavy. I gave his full government. I don't know if he wanted that out there. Anyways, there hasn't been a bigger striker to come to Forge than Brian Wright because he's in form. He shows what he can do. He's been scoring goals in the CPL for the past 3-4 years, but specifically this past season with 9 and 6. You know he's going to get that service. The big thing for him now is he has to answer the call at the right times. Not scoring 2 goals, bagging a brace or a hat trick against a Vancouver FC. It's stepping up in Champions Cup. This is what Forge missed. They missed it in the finals against Calgary. They missed someone that will be there for big moments. So he has to stay fit, but he has to answer the call. It's not hiding on big moments. But I spoke to him. He's ready for this. You can't see a more fitting signing in the CPL than Brian Wright to Forge.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't sound like Forge is done solidifying their roster. I don't know what you're hearing out there, Ollie.
They're not done, no. So Becker's back, Borges is back. Obviously, those were 2 big boxes for them to tick. And I would expect multiple pretty significant signings coming over the next week to 10 days or so from Forge. Obviously, everyone's seen Mo Babuli in training with them. I think there's an expectation that he'll be back with Forge for a second spell. Joining Brian Wright, obviously, from York United. Josh Healy, who again does a great job covering this league and the transfers this offseason. He's mentioned the name Dan Nimick. I've heard the same thing about potentially he could be switching one CPL team for another, going from Halifax to Forge. And then another name that's floating around, less kind of confirmed, but it seems to be in the ether a little bit, is Kunle Dadaluk. And that's a position that Forge certainly needs to strengthen at right back, with Malcolm Duncan having departed. So there's still some question marks. Like Daniel Parra, they're going to pick up his loan option for this year, but it's not clear whether he's going to play for Forge or not. There's some rumors of him leaving Monterey permanently. Hajabrapur, I think, is going to shop around and potentially look to go to Europe, so he's not back confirmed yet. And obviously, they've lost Dom Samuel, they've lost Gavin Matusala, Malcolm Duncan I just mentioned. So there's some additions needed at the back in particular.
Well, Bobby said it to us at the presser at the end of the year CPL finals. Like every 3 years, you're looking at the squad and you have to kind of shift and bring in new players, and it's a different season, right? So
yeah,
you look at players like Matusala and Dom Samuels. Like these guys are Forge, vets. They put in a shift, but that's the beauty about Forge. They always find different players to fill in that role.
Dude, they lose the North Star Cup and then they go Godzilla and everything like, rah! And then they just like bring in all these big players like Must Crush.
Might have woken something up in them, yeah.
Anyways, that's my impression.
It was nice. I was scared. I was like mesmerized too.
And what
there's a lot going on.
That segment went everywhere.
That segment went absolutely everywhere. So you know what?
Shout out to Tony.
Stop it now. Let's stop it now and get to our Tony Bet Top Picks. Manchester United That's tomorrow. Southampton, that's who they host. Who are you picking in this one, Ollie?
Let's give our friend Gareth Wheeler, who's enjoying his vacation, some good news and give Man United a win in this one. I think things have been looking up under Ruben Amorim, more in the big games than maybe these types of games, but Southampton are really struggling, so I'll go United.
Really struggling is an understatement for Southampton. They are bloody poor at the moment.
Oh, dear.
Can't buy a win. So, yeah, Manchester United should have this one. I'm still a bit upset that they beat my side last week in the FA Cup, but we keep it moving.
Okay. Well, we're going all the way down now to League Two here. I don't even know who they're playing.
Real football.
Who are your
Walsall.
MK Dons?
Walsall. Big
Also,
side.
it's a little place in near Birmingham. I once went to an away game there and threw up because I was sick. So it's got a lot of great memories for
You
me.
were sick?
Yeah, there it is. Give the air quotes, Jules.
Predicting another miserable
Too
day.
much alcohol. Got it.
No, I was legitimately ill. Shouldn't have gone.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Walsall.
So great memories all around. Back Walsall to win this weekend.
Oh, you're not even taking your
You're
team?
not backing your team?
No. They're top of the league by like 10 points. Where this is not
Ollie, the ball is round. It can roll anywhere it wants. Like anything can happen on the day, buddy.
See?
This guy's
He
not
goes
backing
with
his
his
squad.
head, not with his heart. I can't.
Definitely no one
crazy.
vomits.
Yeah. Oh, no, please, no. We don't want anyone being sick.
Sick.
Anyways, all right, guys, there was a lot to digest there. Things are moving forward with CPL teams, MLS sides, and we will talk about all of that all the time right here on One Soccer Today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next.